Hello and welcome to the Pitt Mailbag Show from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. We're your hosts, Chris Carter, Abby Schnable, your college reporters here for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Remember to subscribe to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette or also at post-gazette.com. You can also subscribe to this podcast as well as all our podcasts on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube by searching Post-Gazette Sports. And thanks to our big sponsor, the North Shore Tavern / Mike's Beer Bar. Great place there in the North Shore. And thanks to them for hosting our live NFL draft show that we had all weekend long. They were 500 different available beers, and quite a few of us sampled a decent amount. So that was a good time to be had by all. Abby Schnable was working hard though, covering all the college players from the local teams that were getting selected there. We'll get into some of those picks, but Abby, how you doing?
I'm good. It was fun. I'm sad that I missed out on the live show, but I had to be, stationary, ready for the Penn State, West Virginia, and Pitt guys those 2 days. Granted, most of them came on Saturday, but I was able to tune in, and y'all did a great job. So kudos to you guys.
Thank you. We had a heck of a team. We were on camera for like 9 hours in 2 days. That was spectacular. But let's get into some questions here. We had a question here that was actually kind of pertaining to some recent Pitt news, and that was from Oscar, who emailed us and asked, has Pat Narduzzi gotten any other transfer portal targets, and is he looking at any specific positions? And the answer to answer Oscar's first question is yes, he has. And in fact, this happened just yesterday. Well, I guess we're recording this on Monday, so this happened Sunday, where Kentucky transfer defensive back Jaremiah Anglin Jr. announced his commitment to Pitt out of the transfer portal. He was a freshman for Kentucky last year, redshirted the season, so he'll be a redshirt freshman coming to Pitt. 6'1", 185 out of Lake Wales, Florida. He's a defensive back who can come in, at least compete and add to the ranks that Pitt needs in its secondary right now. He was a 3-star Rivals guy, but he was a 4-star guy for on 3. And Abby, Pitt's defensive backs and corners, we'll get into some of the guys for the NFL draft because that just happened, but you got guys like AJ Woods and MJ Devonshire who are going to be on training camp rosters at least, and guys like Marquez Williams who aren't around, and we'll talk about Marquez very soon. But it seems to me that Pitt is trying to find guys for the secondary for its future. And, I know everyone's going to talk about defensive line with some of the recent departures, but finding anybody that can start in this secondary in the coming years is going to be very important.
Absolutely. Pitt has a good history of developing young guys into being good defensive backs, good corners. I mean, we saw it with those guys that you mentioned getting drafted or picking up a free agent contract this past weekend, but it even goes farther than that. And while Jaremiah Anglin Jr. is fairly untested in the college level, I think Pitt is a great place for him to come in and be able to make some noise almost immediately, because there is a lot of uncertainty within the defense right now with some departures happening a few weeks ago. But because he's untested, it's hard to say how much he's going to impact his team. But great pickup for Pat Narduzzi, and it'll be exciting to see what he's able to do with it.
Absolutely. And that's the thing here is I think that, even beyond Jaremiah Anglin Jr., everyone's going to be wondering like, hey, what is available to Pitt right now, or what does Pitt need to address? We've talked about the needed defensive end. We've talked about the questions they'll have, at several different positions. But I think defense right now, like you've seen a lot of the reminders that Pitt's put out about, hey, Pitt's the place to go if you want a path to the draft. MJ Devonshire being drafted. I think this was the third or fourth year in a row that the Panthers have had a defensive back selected into the NFL draft. And I think that's, and I mean, this is also, I think at least the second, maybe even I think this is the third year in a row where they've had multiple players selected in the NFL draft in a draft season. And that was something that didn't happen all the time for Pitt players. And that's something I think Pat Narduzzi has been able to make a regular occurrence. So I think it's something that the Pitt's certainly trying to generate. Rylan Gandy looks like right now to be the number one corner, but there's no defined second corner right now because, the past, covering Pitt the last 3 years, it was really very much MJ Devonshire, AJ Woods, and Marquez Williams were the top corners, and there wasn't much dispute about that. Now they're going to need guys to step up. So getting a guy like Jaremiah Anglin at least gives you another young prospect. If he works out, great. If not, well, you get to take other shots at other players. But is adding more to the ranks and giving them more chances to do a lot more there.
Absolutely. And it's good to see Narduzzi get active in the portal right now, just because of the stuff that we've heard about the defense and people leaving from that. But it's you've got openings and taking advantage of them. And I'm curious to pick your brain about this, Chris. But what other positions do you think need a little bit more depth?
I think they absolutely have to go get defensive end now because of the departure of Dayon Hayes. I think that's a big loss. I know that some people were down putting it because he only had 4 sacks last year, but Dayon's a good player. Like, that's the thing. Like, he was someone that they were developing for years, and at least would have given them a starter capable guy. Not to say that they don't have other starter capable guys, but now they're going. It's more of a question mark than it was before, and that's where I think Pitt's going to need some serious help, especially because the past several Pitt teams that have been very good, so outside of last year, the defensive line has been a major asset, and like, it still could be this year. There's a lot of young up and coming guys that I think have a lot of potential, but they need a defensive end is one of the, those, a lot of those strengths are in the interior at defensive tackle. Defensive end, more questions there. And I think that that's what's going to be interesting to see how well some of those guys pan out, and it could help them. They got Nate Matlack already in the transfer portal before any of this even happened. He was with them throughout the spring practices and looked fine. But now they're going to have to find more answers there. So if I'm Pitt, that's one position I'm looking specifically at in the coming weeks. Let's switch topics to another Pitt football question regarding the draft. Now, as a recap, Pitt did have 3 players selected. First was Matt Gonsalves, as we said, he would come late in the 3rd round. Bub Means came next in the 5th, and then MJ Devonshire came in the 7th. AJ Woods was signed shortly after the draft by the Commanders, so he's at least going to be in an NFL training camp. But they were the only 4 guys named, at least that I saw, that were involved in that are now on an NFL roster, and that could change. Guys could get training camp invites. There's all sorts of times that happens, or at least rookie camp invites. But one player that Matthew asked about was Marquez Williams, who was a big part of that Pitt secondary for years. He said Marquez Williams has still not been picked up by anybody, and this blows my mind. I understand he's small and didn't run a great 40, but he was a heck of a player. Will the NFL give him a shot? It's a great question, Matthew. And part of this is acknowledging that, yeah, he's like, 5'7", didn't run a great 40-yard dash time, and it's part of the position that he's kind of pigeonholed into. He's going to, like, at Pitt, in college, you can be 5'7" and play on the outside, because if you're talented enough, you're aggressive enough, you can play with college receivers. You cannot do that in the NFL unless it's like in very spot situations. So he's kind of limited to being a slot, and slot cornerbacks just aren't in high demand the way that outside cornerbacks are. And, again, when he didn't test out of this roof, like when you think about some of the guys that have made it onto late in NFL drafts, Jason Pinnock, Damari Mathis, guys like that, they tested amazingly at Pitt's Pro Day. AJ Woods did that this year, and he didn't get drafted. I think that's the biggest thing holding Marquez Williams back. But that doesn't mean that I don't think he doesn't deserve a shot, nor will he not get a shot. I think that he will get a chance to play at some point.
Yeah, I think there are 2 things that kind of jump out other than his size and his speed that make me think why he didn't get drafted. And I think one of them just has to do with how the team was this past year. Not a great season for them in general. Less of the defense's struggles, but still. But then also, I think you have to look within Pitt's class this year. He had 2 other guys at his position going up against him 4 spots. And I think when you're an NFL scout, you're looking at, okay, well, he's not even the best at Pitt right now. And he definitely offers a lot of different things to Pitt, to a college team. But he was going up against, not up against like head to head, but when you have 2 other corners in your draft class, it's difficult to separate yourself, especially when you don't test well and you don't have that height. I could see him sneaking onto a rookie camp like you mentioned, but I feel like since we haven't heard much at this point, usually those spots go pretty fast. I wouldn't be surprised if you see him getting an opportunity to play in the UFL. I just think he didn't help himself by not testing well, and then it didn't help that Pitt didn't play well.
Yeah, again, I agree with you entirely. Having a 3-9 year does not help, point more people to him. Though I think that if anyone was looking at Marquez Williams, I think that they would see someone that they'd want, especially with his track record at Pitt. Because to me, Marquez Williams was not was not really part of the reasons Pitt struggled this year. He was actually one of the guys I think that helped them in their toughest times. And when Pitt has been good, Marquez Williams was a big bonus to the team. I put it this way: for those who want to, Matthew, if you want to know what might happen if if Marquez is going to get a shot, what's going to happen is probably something along the lines of how the Steelers brought in Mike Hilton. Mike Hilton was brought in, undrafted guy, small, undersized, didn't test amazingly, and everyone was wondering, like, hey, what's going to happen here? Will he? He's just going to probably get cut right away. But I remember 2017 was actually the first ever training camp that I covered for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and when I was there, I remember seeing Mike Hilton just flying all over the place, and he wasn't the fastest on the field, he wasn't the biggest on the field, but he was making plays and being loud about it. And listen, Marquez Williams has Mike Hilton energy, and I think that that's something that when NFL teams see, when they get a chance to see him up close, someone will appreciate that. But the question is getting up close, and let's face it, and this is outside of Marquez Williams, it's why it's so hard to make it into the NFL. There's plenty of guys that I think that if they had gotten a better chance and a better light, they would have made it into the NFL. There's countless of guys like that, stories like that across the country. So Marquez Williams, he's just going to have to wait his time. He tweeted out, in fact, Monday morning, "Don't count me out." And I agree. Don't count Marquez Williams out. He has talent. He has the right energy. And I think that if he gets a shot somewhere, he could stick as long as he makes a couple plays and people start seeing like, oh, wait, we want that kind of swagger on our defense.
Absolutely. So, yeah. I mean, like you said, just there's upsides here for sure.
Absolutely. Rick gets us back into Pitt basketball here with a question, though. Rick asks, if there was one more type of player Jeff Capel could add to Pitt's basketball roster, what skill position would be the best fit? And let's also review for people. Pitt did add Cam Corin, a center from Florida State, which you and I said was a big priority, was getting a center who could score and play defense and have experience in the ACC. Check for Cam Corin. And then they added Dayon Dunn out of the transfer portal from Houston, an experienced 6'5" guard who we talked about before is, can bring good defense and can bring some mid-range scoring and maybe some good bench minutes coming off here. So if Pitt was to add one more type of player to this roster, Abby, and you were, let's put you as the Pitt GM, the Jeff Capel, the Milan Brown, the person you're on the phones, working the phones in the transfer portal, what type of player are you trying to add to this roster?
I want a sharpshooter. I don't feel like they have someone. I mean, they have a slew of guys who can make tough shots, absolutely. But I want someone who's dedicated to making crazy shots, kind of giving Blake Hinson energy in the fact that he was able to just make 3 after 3 after 3. I think that's something this team is missing a little bit. Again, those guys that they have on the roster can make threes, but there's no one that's just like known for their 3-point shooting. And I think that's something that this team could only benefit from. I don't think you need a sharpshooter, but I think getting one just puts you in a better position here, because the past couple seasons, Pitt has had a guy that's been really known for shooting. Blake Hinson this past season. Before that, you had a guy like Greg Elliott really coming in and providing that spark. I'm sure there are examples from previous years.
Yeah.
But it's just, that's something that this team has utilized well in previous seasons to get them into national talks, and I think that's something that will only help this squad in a potential run to the NCAA tournament.
I think so too, especially because a shooter will stretch the floor out with the roster that they already have. Like Jalen Lowe can shoot the 3, but Jalen Lowe is also a great facilitator, and you don't necessarily want to have him be the guy just waiting in the corner, forcing the defense to have to honor him. You want him to be at the top of the key, working the offense, moving around, and getting other people set up. Ishmael Leggett can shoot the 3, but you want him being your 2 that can drive to the well and kind of create that way. Zach Austin can shoot the 3, but he's more of a floor runner. He's a bigger guy who you want using him here. Cam Corin's not going to be shooting 3s, but you want him in the paint. So when you have all these guys that have these different skill sets, and Dayon Dunn also not a 3-point shooter, but maybe a mid-range guy. So when you have all these different guys that fit these different roles, these are good roles to have. But if you just add that one guy, when you know he's on the floor, he's a problem to hit a 3-pointer from the corner, from the wing, anywhere where he can just rest me on the perimeter and force the defense to say, hey, we have to keep a body away from the paint, because if that guy's given an open shot, it's going to hurt us, especially when Pitt starts getting on its runs. that could really help the Panthers. And you're right, Greg Elliott's a great comparison. I'll even say Nike Sabande, because there were games in that season where Greg Elliott struggled and they threw in Sabande and he could hit 3-pointers. And that was that having that kind of guy, even if it's a guy that's coming off the bench, I think would be a real asset to the Panthers, especially with the current strengths that they have right now, because Pitt's got facilitators. Pitt's now does have a big man, but now if it gets a sharpshooter, I think that's the most complete roster that you could have made going into this next season.
Absolutely. And like you said, it just gives more options. Like, there's a threat when it comes to you having a really strong guy down low, thinking about Cam Corrin, and then someone you can easily kick the ball out to, and you know that they're going to be able to hit a shot. And like you mentioned, Jalen Lowe's a good option there. However, that's not Jalen Lowe's role on this team to be the go-to guy. And I think it just creates more weapons. Like that's the thing that we talk about, that 2023 team last season. Just they had so many offensive weapons that they were dangerous. And I don't think they had that necessarily this year, just because of, they didn't really have a strong center, but now they have a strong center who's able to facilitate and kick the ball out. And then Jalen Lowe's there. And then you've got Ish Leggett and Zach Austin. And again, all of these are the Diaz-Graham twins. All of these are.
I was going to bring up, I forgot to say Guillermo, because he can hit the 3 too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And but having all of these people who can hit these shots just opens up the opportunity, and then you're not as reliant down low, because I think that happened a lot this past season where it put a lot of pressure on Fetty to have to finish down low, and then the pressure got to him because you couldn't always, you didn't have someone who, they were all good shooters, don't get me wrong, but he couldn't necessarily kick it out and know that the shot was going in. And having another guy like that just takes pressure off of everyone else, and you don't have to just be a stretch. It's one of those teams where it's like a different guy every night. And I think that adding a sharpshooter would just, be the cherry on top to this squad.
Absolutely. I think that would certainly be a weapon there. Let's go to our last question. This one comes from Sharon, and I'm going to defer to you in this one because I don't know the answer to this question. Sharon asks, who's the unknown future star for Pitt volleyball for 2024, the way Olivia Babcock was for 2023? And Olivia Babcock was a superstar for Pitt volleyball last year, coming out of nowhere as a true freshman, lighting it up. Abby, you covered that team all last year. You've covered this team in the early parts of this spring. Is there a young player who could be turning heads when the Panthers are looking to make their another Final Four run?
Absolutely. I do want to preface by saying I don't think we should expect another Olivia Babcock out of this season, just because she was really a certain scenario, especially within her position. Gives her a lot of those flashy names are going to be people who are making a lot of kills, who are scoring a lot of points. And the person that I have targeted as my unknown future star player doesn't play a position that, gets a lot of kills, is known for that. So the person that pops out to me is Ryla Jones. She's a middle blocker. And Pitt is known for its block. It's been ranked in the top 5 the past couple of seasons, mostly due to its veteran presence. I think Serena Gray, Chiamaka Nwokolo, and Chia's gone. Serena's been gone for 2 years. And, you have one returning middle blocker in Bree Kelly, as Rachel Jepson was running. She's Mormon, and she just announced she's going on a mission, so she won't be available this season, which makes more playing time for a player like Ryla Jones when you usually have 2 middle blockers, and the fact that you only have one returner in Bree Kelly, there's an opening there. And I've just been impressed with what she's been able to do this spring. She decided to forgo her second semester senior year to come to Pitt to start working. I've been impressed with what she's able to do. Even Dan Fisher has talked a lot about how he is big on Ryla Jones, said she's a lot more developed than he expected. And so she's kind of the person that I've targeted. As of right now, they only have 2 freshmen on the squad. Ryla Jones and Bianca Garibaldi. I don't know how to pronounce. She's Argentinian. She's fantastic. She's also a middle blocker. I just don't, and I think she'll be fantastic as well, and you'll see her getting in. I just don't think she is as far along as Ryla Jones is right now, because Ryla Jones looks just as good as some of these returning players. And again, I want to preface with, don't expect another Olivia Babcock. But Ryla Jones is a big one. And then I do want to just shout out, what's funny about the whole Olivia Babcock thing is she was an unknown coming into Pitt. She wasn't one of the top players. The two big names Pitt got were Tori Stafford and Blair Bayless. And I think you're going to see a lot more. We saw tons of Tori last year, and you're going to continue to see that. But I think we are going to see a lot more of Blair this upcoming season, who has the potential to put up numbers like Olivia. It's just hard when you have three girls in that class, women in that class that are all fantastic players. And that's why I put Ryla Jones probably a little bit above Blair Bayless, just because there's more opportunity for her. But, I'm excited for this team. I can't wait for volleyball to get started now that the spring season is over and I have to wait until August. They return so many players and they're freshmen. Dan Fisher's got himself a hell of a squad, and it should be fun.
It should be fun. And I think you brought a good point about a middle blocker being in need. They had people like Chia, who was around for quite some time. I covered Chia for a few of their tournament runs, and she was always very important. But having middle blockers is so important. You go back to that loss that they had in Nebraska. That defense changes games when you have people that can turn back, and when a team's trying to set something up on offense, that can make a difference. And I'm no volleyball expert, but when I was watching that, I was really impressed with Nebraska's middle defense being able to turn the ball back and kind of reset what Pitt was trying to do whenever Pitt tried to get some momentum going. So if Ryla can emerge in that way as an elite type or a very promising type middle blocker, certainly sounds like that could be a big difference maker from the Lady Panthers.
Absolutely. I think we talked about a couple weeks ago when we had a different volleyball question. This team returns so many stars at every other position. Middle blocker is kind of the unknown, but I'm not worried about middle blocker because Bree Kelly was a star before she got injured. And then you've got a player like Ryla Jones who's already making noise as a freshman. And it's just exciting to kind of see all the pieces fit together, especially, with the potential to try and a fourth consecutive run to the Final Four, because you still got your stars there, and then you just have to figure out the rest of it.
Absolutely. She's Abby Schnable. I'm Chris Carter. We're your Pitt beat writers right here in the College Beat Writers here for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Find us at post-gazette.com for all our written work. Check out this show and all of our shows on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of our daily sports content that comes out, and also the Monday, Wednesday, Friday episodes of the North Shore Drive podcast. And as always, a big thanks to our sponsors, Mike's Beer Bar, North Shore Tavern, right there on Federal Street in the North Shore of Pittsburgh, the best bar in all of Pittsburgh. Go there for 500 different available beers. 300 of those beers are from the local Pittsburgh area, and 80 of those local beers are available on tap. It's an amazing place to be. We'll see you at Mike's Beer Bar next time. We'll see you next week here on the Pitt Mailbag Show from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Again, a big thanks to Abby for coming out, for showing up again and helping me out with this show, because it's a big help here. We'll see you again. Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.